Ladies and gentlemen of the internet, this is your wake-up call. This one is for hip-hop heads only. This is long, but crucial for those who want to understand what happened to true hip-hop. Hip-hop is a state of mind that many things can never approach. Hip-hop embraces her fans like a mother's loving touch. Having said that, I fell in love with hip-hop when I was attending high school. At that time, I had been listening to artists like Enforcers, Two Live Crew, and a lot of the Miami-based artists. Don't get me wrong, I respect Uncle Luke and I love what he did to get Miami bass on the map. It was changed for me one afternoon after school. I had a friend from Connecticut that moved in next door, and he was at my house and tuned into Yo MTV Raps, which was the first time I even knew that show existed. My philosophy came on, and it changed my world. When I heard, "Let us begin," what, where, why, or when will all be explained like instructions to a game, I knew I had met the genre I wanted to spend the rest of my life with. The golden age of hip-hop. After this message, we'll be right back, and then we'll lead into the conspiracy. I want to talk a little bit about a new affiliate, Nagast Footwear. They are a black-owned company that makes some of the best quality shoes, clothes, and hats that I've seen in a very long time. They are designed to empower customers and to teach self-love, self-respect, and self-confidence. I've purchased some of their footwear, and they have lasted me well over a year. Nagast Footwear makes sneakers, running shoes, slippers, boots, hats, and clothing. I love my slippers. I love my sneakers. Even game show contestants love my sneakers. Click my affiliate link below to visit their site to browse and to shop. Every purchase helps me grow this platform. Golden Age hip-hop is a name given to mainstream hip-hop music created from the mid-1980s to early to mid-1990s, particularly by artists and musicians originating from the New York metropolitan area. The artists most often associated with the period are LL Cool J, Slick Rick, Ultramagnetic MCs, The Jungle Brothers, Run DMC, Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, KRS One, Eric B. and Rakim, De La Soul, Big Daddy Kane, EPMD, Biz Markie, Salt and Pepper, Queen Latifah, Gangster, Kid and Play, The Fat Boys, DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and A Tribe Called Quest. There are so many more, but I'm going to stop right there. Now, The Guardian states, the golden age of hip-hop from 1986 to 1993 gave the world an amazing number of great records and also describes the period in November 1993 when A Tribe Called Quest and Wu-Tang Clan released albums as the next golden age. Music critic Tony Green, in the book Classic Material, refers to the two-year period 1993 to 1994 as a second golden age that saw influential high-quality albums using elements of past classicism, drum machines, Roland TR-808, drum samplers, Akai MPC-60, SP-1200, turntable scratches, references to old-school hip-hop hits, and tongue-twisting triplet verbalisms, while making clear that new directions were being taken. Green lists as examples the Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the Wu-Tang 36 Chambers, Nas's Illmatic, De La Soul's 1993 release Balloon Mind State, Snoop Dogg's Doggy Style, A Tribe Called Quest's third album Midnight Marauders, and the Outkast debut Southern Playalistic Cadillac Music. So what exactly is the conspiracy? Before we begin, let's look at the trajectory of hip-hop from the early 80s until now. In that era, listening to hip-hop was like going to school or university. It was educational, and on occasion it would change your life and challenge your personal belief system. Here are some songs that exemplify the greatness of that era. Why Is That by KRS One, Originators by Jaz-O Jay Z, Self-Destruction, I Know You Got Soul by Eric B. and Rakim, Children's Story by Slick Rick, Renee by Lost Boys, The Style You Haven't Done Yet by KRS One, 93 Till Infinity by Souls of Mischief, Black Steel in the Hour of Chaos by Public Enemy, Rock This Funky Joint by Poor Righteous Teachers, and Cool Like That by Diggable Planets. There are so many more songs I could mention, literally hundreds, but let's get into the conspiracy. So, years ago, a letter circulated online that was supposedly from a high-ranking industry insider. He said back in 1991, there was a secret meeting that took place in which he was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of music business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Now, before I read this, let me just say that I've been on stages performing for large crowds of up to 50,000 people. I've auditioned for labels, and I can tell you the labels demand control and negotiate to a point. Back in the day, we auditioned for a company claiming to be Virgin Records at a showcase in West Palm Beach, and they said they wanted complete creative control of all past, present, and future music, so we would own nothing. The same thing happened with Sony Records. Radio stations were not exempt, and payola existed then too. I was even told by a certain Miami station that they don't play local artists because the station makes no money off of them. The industry was massively corrupt, and I can remember distinctively when labels were no longer interested in listening to our conscious brand of hip-hop. Anyways, I encourage all artists to stay away from these labels, do it yourself. Technology has changed, and you now have the power of the internet. Anyway, here's the letter from the so-called executive who wanted to reveal what he witnessed. I'm going to read this from beginning to end, all right? So pay attention. Hello. After more than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making this story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I've simply decided to leave out names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were, like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for. Between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you may call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came from Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then. Since technology and media weren't accessible to people like they are today, the industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted. This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of music business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Little did I know, what we would be asked to participate in was one of the most unethical and destructive business practices I've ever seen. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people being there, most of them familiar faces. Speaking to those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting as many of us did not care for rap music and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private gathering to discuss its future. Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be in our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign a confidentiality agreement, preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigued and in some cases disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long but very clear on the matter and consequences, which stated that violating the terms would result in job termination. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but couldn't find anyone who had answers for us. A few people refused to sign and walked out. No one stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but curiosity got the best of me. A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected the agreements from us. Quickly after the meeting began, one of my industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everyone else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by his first name and gave no further details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but it was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industry and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable at the strangeness of the gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry, which would become even more rewarding with our active involvement. He explained that the companies we worked for had invested millions into the building of privately owned prisons, and that our positions of influence in the music industry would actually impact the profitability of these investments. I remember many of us in the group immediately looking at each other in confusion. At the time, I didn't know what a private prison was, but I wasn't the only one. Sure enough, someone asked what these prisons were, and what any of this had to do with us. We were told that these prisons were built by privately owned companies who received funding from the government based on the number of inmates. The more inmates, the more money the government would pay these prisons. It was also made clear to us that since these prisons are privately owned, as they become publicly traded, we'd be able to buy shares. Most of us were taken aback by this. Again, a couple of people asked what this had to do with us. At this point, my industry colleague who had first opened the meeting took the floor again and answered our questions. He told us that since our employers had become silent investors in this prison business, it was now in their interest to make sure that these prisons remained filled.
Ever wonder why you see the same stereotypes of black and brown people depicted in hip-hop music? What if I told you that some of the biggest music companies are in cahoots with private prison owners, and that the rap music we listen to is not only meant to entertain, but to verbally and visually support criminal behaviors that funnel disenfranchised people into these private prisons? Lastly, what if I told you I have proof? In 2012, Core Civic, formerly known as Corrections Corporation of America, the biggest name in the private prison industry, contacted 48 states offering to buy their prisons. One requirement of eligibility for the deal was particularly strange: an assurance by the agency partner that the agency has sufficient inmate population to maintain a minimum 90% occupancy rate over the term of the contract. Wait, track it? What? What kind of legal and ethical measures could be taken to ensure the maintenance of a 90% prison occupancy rate? Now let's work together to connect these things, because I'm sure you're a smart person. It won't be long. Let's do the work. In 2012, a mere 232 media executives were responsible for the intake of 277 million Americans, controlling all avenues necessary to manufacture any celebrity and spark any trend. Time Warner, as the owner of Warner Brothers Records, can not only sign an artist, but since they're also owners of Entertainment Weekly, they can also put an artist on the cover by next week. You think you choose what you listen to, but do you? Both BET and MTV belong to Viacom. Okay, now I know that's not news to some, but when the use of these media conglomerates is cross-checked with ownership of the biggest names in prison privatization, it's starting to get a little fishy. The largest holder in Core Civic, formerly Corrections Corp of America, is Vanguard Group Incorporated. Vanguard is the #1 largest holder in both Viacom and Time Warner. Vanguard is also the largest holder in the GEO Group, the second largest owner of private prisons in the US. The overlap in private prison / mass media ownership is disturbing. Let's make this clear. The people who own the media are the same people who own private prisons. The exact same people. They make money from getting so-and-so from the hood to glorify the life they live, and they don't care about the impact it has on others because money is the motive. Then when the music influences others in criminal behavior, they make money from all the impressionable low-income people of color that are expected to go inside their private prisons. You can research these companies yourself, by the way. It's not hidden.
Our job would be to help make this happen by marketing music which promotes criminal behavior, rap being the music of choice. He assured us that this would be a great situation for us because rap music was becoming an increasingly profitable market for our companies, and as an employee, we'd also be able to buy personal stocks in these prisons. Immediately, silence came over the room. You could have heard a pin drop. I remember looking around to make sure I wasn't dreaming and saw half of the people with dropped jaws. My daze was interrupted when someone shouted, "Is this a joke?" At this point, things became chaotic. Two of the men who were part of the unfamiliar group grabbed the man who shouted out and attempted to remove him from the house. A few of us, myself included, tried to intervene. One of them pulled out a gun and we all backed off. They separated us from the crowd and all four of us were escorted outside. My industry colleague, who had opened the meeting earlier, hurried out to meet us and reminded us that we had signed an agreement and would suffer the consequences of speaking about this publicly or even with those who attended the meeting. I asked him why he was involved in something this corrupt, and he replied that it was bigger than the music industry and nothing we want to challenge without risking consequences. We all protested, and as he walked back into the house, I remember word for word the last thing he said. "It's out of my hands now. Remember, you signed an agreement." He then closed the door behind him. The men rushed us to our cars and actually watched until we drove off. A million things were going through my mind as I drove away, and eventually decided to pull over and park on a side street in order to collect my thoughts. I replayed everything in my mind repeatedly, and it all seemed very surreal to me. I was angry with myself for not having taken a more active role in questioning what had been presented to us. I'd like to believe the shock of it all is what suspended my better nature. After what seemed like an eternity, I was able to calm myself enough to make it home. I didn't talk to or call anyone that night. The next day back at the office, I was visibly out of it, but just blamed it on being under the weather. No one else in my department had been invited to the meeting, and I felt a sense of guilt for not being able to share what I had witnessed. I thought about contacting the 3 others who were kicked out of the house, but I didn't remember their names and thought that tracking them down would probably bring unwanted attention. I considered speaking out publicly at the risk of losing my job, but I realized I'd probably be jeopardizing more than my job, and I wasn't willing to risk anything happening to my family. I thought about those men with guns and wondered who they were. I had been told that this was bigger than the music business, and all I could do was let my imagination run free. There were no answers and no one to talk to. I tried to do a little research on private prisons, but didn't uncover anything about the music business involvement. However, the information I did find confirmed how dangerous this prison business really was.
We talked about a secret meeting that was held in regards of the direction that hip hop would go, and because some of the major labels were investing in private prisons. So we spoke about how they made sure that gangster rap was pushed to the forefront more than any other genre of hip hop at the time, to basically influence the youth into committing crimes and living a gangster life or a thug life or whatnot. You know what I'm saying? We were all basically tricked, man. You know what I'm saying? What we thought we were expressing ourselves and getting frustration off our chest about the way we were forced to live in these ghettos and in the slums, and at the same time, they're the ones that took our lifestyles and they glamorized it. Mm-hmm. They put the lights and the cameras behind it and said, look, like this looks attractive, don't it? You know what I'm saying? But we were simply like, yo, this is where we come from. This is what we had to go through. It wasn't the fact that we were glamorizing it, because in a lot of our songs, we told people like, we glad we not living that life no more. It wasn't fun. You know what I'm saying? We was forced to live that way, but when we got up out of it, we started to try to turn around and do positive things. And, that's one thing I feel like people need to know. It was, when they asked what happened to all the conscious rappers, that's what happened to them. Mm-hmm. Because they made it a point to make sure that those kind of messages and this kind of rap music would not be acceptable to the fans anymore. If it's not violent, we're not going to push it. If it has a message, if you're trying to educate the people, we're not having it. We want them listening to strictly nonsense. Nothing that's going to be dangerous to us. We don't want any uprisings, because they understood the power that Tupac possessed. Mm-hmm. That's why they were probably happy when he was gone, because it was like we almost had a Malcolm X on a way bigger level, right, behind hip hop. It would have been times 10. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, so after Tupac, it was basically like, okay, we dodged that. We need to change it, get rid of conscious rap. So what they do, let's make sure these dudes get them niggas a couple of dollars. Mm-hmm. Give them a couple of dollars, make them forget that it's even a problem. You know what I'm saying? And that's basically what happened.
What are your thoughts on some of the stuff that, like, when you have MCs out there that are just mumbling, you can't understand words? And what are your thoughts on what hip-hop is becoming?
Well, it's by design, what hip-hop has become today. And, there's a contingency of people, who probably dismiss what I'm saying to being, conspiracy theory or whatever. But I don't subscribe to that terminology. As that pertains to hip hop, there since 1990, and my legendary brother Reddy Red can attest to this. Since 1990, there has been a conscious and deliberate effort on the people or the entities that really control our entertainment culture to influence the most influenced population to be, I guess, influenced through the power of suggestion to behave like criminals. The prison industrial complex controls our music culture. And so every time we turn on our conventional radio, stations like Hot 97, Power, or whoever, we hear these songs that are influential in helping our youth to have a perception about how to, I guess, follow in the footsteps of their favorite artists. If every day of your young impressionable life, your favorite artist who's in your ear more hours a day than your parent and your teacher, and they're telling you that the road to their success was to stand on the corner and sling packs and, excuse my language, shoot niggas and, F hoes, a percentage of the population by way of the power of suggestion becomes that, because, you're influenced by what we see and we hear. Audio frequencies and visual images are two things that enter a person's subconscious mind without our permission. And a perfect example of that would be the fact that, how many times have you heard a song that you absolutely hated, but because of the fact that the people who are responsible for dictating what songs are played on the radio stations, they're called program directors, and they're called that for a very good reason, because they program the music that programs the listener. So for that reason alone, when you're listening to this music every day and you're listening to it in rotation, it causes a perception. And the perception that it causes influences the most influenced population amongst us to behave a certain way. That's the reason why advertising companies spend billions and billions of dollars every year to pay for commercials to make people think, make the consumers believe that we need their products. But the truth of the matter is that if it has a commercial, the chances are we don't really need it.
And I'll be honest, I've never told this story before, and I feel like I'm just going to say it because I feel like you should know. Anyway, before we signed it though, I was a bit off on it, and because the pressure was a bit much, it was like, sign it. And I remember speaking to my old manager, right? And if I'm lying, I'm flying. He's phoned me and we're in the studio and I put him on loudspeaker, old manager, and he's like, yeah, like, what are you lot thinking about the deal? We're like, yeah, we want to sign it, but we want to wait and see what happens. And like, on God, Shams, his voice changed in like a demon's voice. Sign the deal. Sign it now. Sign it. I got so shook, I threw my phone on the floor. If I'm lying, I'm flying. Wallahi. And me and Crep just staring at the phone on the floor like, what the fuck? His voice just changed into like a gremlin. And all he kept saying is, sign the deal, sign the deal, sign the deal. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I dropped the phone and stepped back like this, and we're just staring at the phone for about 3 minutes. Like, I'm like, did you hear that, bro? He's like, yeah, bro. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Eventually, it was as if the meeting had never taken place. It all seemed surreal. I became more reclusive and stopped going to any industry events unless professionally obligated to do so. On 2 occasions, I found myself attending the same function as my former colleague, Both times, our eyes met, but nothing more was exchanged. As the months passed, rap music had definitely changed direction. I was never a fan of it, but even I could tell the difference. Rap acts that talked about politics or harmless fun or conscious rap was quickly fading away as gangster rap started dominating the airwaves. Only a few months had passed since the meeting, but I suspect that the ideas presented that day had been successfully implemented. It was as if the order had been given to all major label executives. The music was climbing the charts and most companies were more than happy to capitalize on it. Each one was churning out their very own gangster rap acts on an assembly line. Everyone bought into it, consumers included. Violence and drug use became a central theme in most rap music. I spoke to a few of my peers in the industry to get their opinions on the new trend, but was told repeatedly that it was all supply and demand. Sadly, many of them even expressed that the music reinforced their prejudice of minorities.
What up? Why you? You're playing with your life. You cause yourself strife. It's as easy as 1, 2, 3. Take me on.
I officially quit the music business in 1993, but my heart had already left months before. I broke ties with the majority of my peers and removed myself from this thing I had once loved. I took some time off, returned to Europe for a few years, settled out of state, and lived a quiet life away from the world of entertainment. As the years passed, I managed to keep my secret, fearful of sharing it with the wrong person, but also a little ashamed of not having had the balls to blow the whistle. But as rap got worse, my guilt grew. Fortunately, in the late 90s, having the internet as a resource which wasn't at my disposal in the early days made it easier for me to investigate what is now labeled the prison industrial complex. Now that I have greater understanding of how private prisons operate, things make much more sense than they ever did before. I see how the criminalization of rap music played a big part in promoting racial stereotypes and misguided so many impressionable young minds into adopting these glorified criminal behaviors which often lead to incarceration. 20 years of guilt is a heavy load to carry, but the least I can do now is to share my story, hoping that fans of rap music realize how they've been used for the past several decades. Although I planned on remaining anonymous for obvious reasons, my goal now is to get this information out to as many people as possible. Please help me spread the word. Hopefully, others who attended the meeting back in 1991 will be inspired by this and tell their own stories. Most importantly, if only one life has been touched by my story, I pray it makes the weight of my guilt a little more tolerable. Thank you. I saw the change, and the people I was on stage with, if y'all are watching this video, you know what I'm talking about. Y'all see the change, y'all have seen the change, you've seen how things have shifted from one dynamic to the other. All I can say is just listen to the lyricism, listen to the messages of all of the music from that era, listen to all the messages to all the music from this era. I know there's a lot of people who's on one side or the other side, there's a lot of divide, there's a lot of back and forth, but at the same time, the music back then was not driven towards some of the same things we're listening to right now. Now, I can't tell you if that letter is 100% true or not. There's a lot of holes, a lot of variables to this story, but considering what's happened in rap and entertainment aligns with those same time frames from the letter, it's highly believable. And like I said, I've witnessed a lot of it myself, been a victim of some of it myself. When you see videos like this.
Okay, so it is this immaculate conception and partnership between the private and the public sector to perpetuate the system of modern day slavery.
If jails become businesses, what do you have to do? You have to market for your business. And who are you me being a business major, you have to have your target audiences. And who are your target audiences? My people.
These people are coming home, and they're coming home worse. These people you're incarcerating, you're not teaching them nothing, because Pataki took away college in 1995. He took away college from the prison system. So these people can't come home with college degrees, so they're coming home worse than when they went in. So what you're really doing is you're really putting on pancakes calling it syrup.
Or these.
So if you wonder where Brand Nubians went, where Poor Righteous Teachers went, where Public Enemy went, where KRS One went, and all sorts of groups like that was talking, even Queen Latifah and Moni Love and those, you know what I'm saying? It's a back door.
Yeah, anything that was harmless, fun rap, you know, anything that had a message in it had to go.
Yeah, that's why if you even notice though,
we talk about that all the time.
Even be brief with it, you know what I'm saying? Those charms that came out like maybe 1988, 89, the African charms, those they lasted for about 2 years and they disappeared real quick, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Now, it's not enough for them to exploit our culture and make all the money off of it. Because let's keep it real, the industry has never been favorable towards the artist. Never. But they're going to go beyond the artist to get the artist to influence and lure in the consumer, which they knew at the time were mainly minorities.
Yep.
In other words, keep promoting gangster rap so that the youngsters will be influenced by them, which in turn will incite them to want to act like them, and it's a very good chance they'll end up in their prison.
Yeah.
So they're getting paid twice. They're getting paid from the artists they signing, and then they're getting paid from the people that these artists influence that goes to prison trying to be like these artists.
Yeah.
So they making a killing.
Rap music we see today is nothing but hypnosis over young black youth. Young black males see these people on TV and they admire them like they're superheroes. The federal government has known since the Woodstock days that if you control the music, you control the children.
It becomes more believable. Hip-hop used to empower our communities with positive lyrics, and many of the songs once provided us with historical facts about our own history. All these messages were packaged in some of the greatest production and skilled lyricism in music history. We went from positive, conscious lyrics to money, girls, drugs, and guns. Also WAPs. See how it parallels the letter? On top of that, this minority-dominated genre is controlled by the same type of people who hate us the most. Again, we're funding the very machine that keeps us mentally enslaved. Listen, the fact is this. You have no idea how deep this gets, and it's far more dangerous than you think it is. For me to really decipher this and break it down, this video would be in multiple series, and I'm not going to go through that. This is plenty right here. I strongly believe this person is telling the truth. Just look at the entertainment industry on a whole since the 90s. I'm not just talking about music. I'm talking about everything on a whole. You know, we already know about the black men in dresses. There's enough videos about that, so I'm not even going to elaborate on it. So specifically, I'm talking about black entertainment. For me, it's all about the beats, but most importantly, it's always been about the lyricism for me. You know, even when I'm writing my own music, it's gotta be deep in lyrical content, but that's what I've always liked. Other people may not like that. You're entitled to what you like. So I really don't care what you listen to. You just need to keep an open, objective mind. Don't just cut it off because it's old school. You need to listen to the old school so you can understand how we got to the new school. Anyways, I left a list of songs below in the comments that'll help free your mind from all of this. It'll help you understand what I'm talking about, especially when it comes to the lyricism. You'll understand what I'm talking about, why I like lyricism, why lyrical content is so important to me. But more important than that, you need to listen to it for yourself. You need to listen to not just the lyrics, but the beats, everything. There's a lot that the youth don't know about the history of hip-hop and where it came from.
Well, since you put it that way, I'ma meet you halfway, cause I reign supreme like the IRS on tax day. Let's let the track play. A dude with a camera's running up. I'm at this gas station, so I'ma have to pull out double pumps. It's nighttime, but the sun is up. I hope you got enough battery to capture me accurately, spitting reality by this truck. Skills never luck. Yo, when the beat drops, I got you. It's only me and you, so I'm not just top 5, I'm top 2. The man with the camera, he stopped through. So I'ma shout DMX, shot G, Black Rob, and Scott LaRock. rock too. I'm ancient and underground, you dig, like a fossil. It's over your lid, ancient underground, dig, fossil. I'm archaeological, philosophical, I'm that nice. While whack rappers are falling, I rise like the gas price. Street teacher, fast life, teaching cash for class life. You can see I was an MC in my past life. What's the odds of you catching me while the beat rocks you? You see I'm flowing like this gasoline out this nozzle. The hostile apostle, preaching and teaching this gospel. Time for a shameless commercial break, you know I got to. Let them know when it comes to injustice, I'm never calm. I drop bombs on KRS-ONE.com. That's KRS-ONE.com. A little bit of cultural education never did you no harm. It's kind of warm, so I'm sweating no less. Make sure you pick up my new album as well, Between the Protests. It's so fresh, I'm obsessed with what I'm seeing. You out there watching me on your phone right now probably can't believe what you're seeing. Let's get back to the teaching. Speaking over the bass track, rappers get their face slapped right here at this racetrack. It's time to face facts. I'm spirit, but my race black. I'm giving you food for thought. Taste that. Yo, it's up.
This has been your wake-up call.